Scott. Mr. Westcott.
Present.
Thank you. Mr. Zintak.
Present.
Mr. Arena.
Here.
Mr. Billich. Mr. Billich. Mr. Booker.
Here.
Mr. Butita.
Here.
Mrs. Crosby.
Here.
Mr. Fellers.
Here.
Mr. Fiducia.
Here.
Mr. Girl.
Present.
Mrs. Gorel.
Present.
Mr. Hoffman.
Present.
Mr. Kelly.
Here.
Mr. McDonald.
Here.
Mr. Neighbors.
Here.
Mrs. Red.
Present.
Mr. Salgado.
Present.
Mr. Schultz. Mr. Schultz. Mr. Tassoni.
Present.
Mr. Webster.
Here.
Okay, and I do believe that Mr. Billich is on the call.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. Chairman, that would be 19 present and 1 absent, sir.
Thank you, Clerk Gummow. I'll now turn the floor over to Board Member McDonald for the invocation and pledge.
Thank you, Mr. Fellers. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, please watch over the first responders and military members that are protecting us. I want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to meet tonight and work in your name. Father, I also ask that you help guide us through this virus. I pray that we have the virus under control very soon and we can resume productive lives that are healthy for all families. Father, I pray for everyone who has lost their job due to the virus. Please help these families find the strength to survive in this time. Please give us your wisdom to make it through these challenging times. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the
flag
flag of the United States of America.
to the
and
republic
which
which stands
one nation under God,
Indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty,
liberty,
and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. We have no awards, proclamations, or presentations. Public hearings are today. Mr. Thompson, has there anyone signed up for public comment?
No, sir.
Okay, we will forego that and move on to board member correspondence. Any correspondence from members of the board? Mr. Girl?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As well as you, Mr. Fellers, this will be my last meeting as a Democrat. Beginning December 7th, I will caucus with the Republican Party and then be a Republican thereafter. So just wanted to let everyone know, hear from me first before they heard it anywhere else. So there's lots of reasons, and I'll address a lot of those tomorrow at 3 o'clock on a Zoom meeting that you can join if you like, but I'll give a little bit more in-depth into where I'm going and why I made this choice. But it wasn't chosen, I didn't choose this lightly. But I just wanted to say thank you to Mr. Fellers for all that he's done, and especially filling this role here in the last, which seems like a year, is playing chairman pro temp. So he's done a wonderful job. I'm grateful to work with him. And I wish Mr. Haney the best wherever he goes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Girl. Mr. Arena?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also want to thank the outgoing board members. Mr. Fellers, you always help add to the lively debate, and we appreciate all your fine work as a stand-in chairman whenever needed. Mr. Fiducia for the leadership he showed in dealing with difficult issues and complicated issues, and he took the bull by the horns often and got things done. And Mr. Zintak, I know you were here for a short time, but you certainly contributed while you were here. And I also want to thank Chairman Haney for his service to the community, and I wish him well in his future endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arena. Are there any other comments from board members? Seeing none.
Yes.
we will- oh,
Yes,
Sorry, go ahead, Mr. Webster.
all right. Okay, yeah. Same way, I want to thank everyone that is leaving us, if this is their last meeting. I appreciate working with everyone. Been pretty interesting for most of us, but in particular, I'd like to thank Mr. Fiducia. I think he's next to myself, perhaps. He's been the longest damn guy here. And so I appreciate that, Dave, and we'll miss you. And good luck, whatever happens in your next adventure. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Zintak, for staying in.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. Mr. Billich?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll reverberate everything that was said by Mr. Webster and Mr. Arena, Mr. Earl as well, and Welshman Earl as well to the
Not
Republican
yet. I'll get to it in a minute.
Party in on the Winnebago County. I did want to actually just take a minute just to bring up something. Mr. Webster, when he spoke, actually brought something back up to my attention again, and I don't mean to harp the record player here again, and I don't mean to sound like a record player here and keep repeating myself. One of the things that Mr. Webster brought up in caucus, as well as something that was brought up to many of the other board members' attention with the restaurant industry right now, there will be more discussion. I will actually be scheduling a meeting. I've already discussed with Chris about scheduling a meeting and trying to take more proactive measures to helping out the current restaurant establishments and other establishments that are affected by this going back another phase again. And whether it be helping them by support with the money that we actually did give out as part of the IGA with the city of Rockford for a loan program through the SBA earlier this year, that $250,000 has been mostly paid back, if not all the way. As of last week, I know we were in less than $10,000 of what was still left to be paid back to the county. I'd like to actually roll over the program. That one wasn't able to be used by every single restaurant. There was a few newer places that were purchased up that actually there's also got resold again after they had purchased. So sadly, I want to see our current restaurant industry also succeed. So we'll be taking initiative to talk more about that with economic development. And I do hope that the county board will back these businesses, especially since these are the businesses where we hold events. These are the businesses that have always donated to many different county board members. It doesn't matter which party. And so we definitely want to show them the love and respect, and also show them that we do care and we hear their issues that they've brought up to the county board. So I just want to say that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Billich. Any other correspondence from board members? Seeing none, we'll bypass the chairman's report. Announcements and communications, Clerk Gummow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The items below were received as correspondence.
Thank you, Clerk Gummow. Those will be placed on file.
Thank you.
Moving on to the consent agenda, may I please have a motion to approve the consent agenda, including the raffle report bills, approval of the October 2020 minute, 2020.
Dan?
Yeah,
I
sorry,
don't know
Joe.
if you see me, but I had my hand up.
Oh, sorry, Joe. Go ahead.
Oh, did you? Okay. That's all right. I just wanted to say a couple things. Dan, I'm going to miss you. I appreciate the work you gave us and all the times you had to fill in as chairman. Done a wonderful job. Bert, I'm sad to see you go from our party, but I guess I'm going to look at the brighter side and know that I can look across the aisle and find a friend. And Mr. Zintek, I don't know that I've ever even got a chance to meet you live, but if I haven't, I'm sorry to see you go too. So thank you all for your work on this board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. Now we will go on to the consent agenda. May I have a motion, please, on consent agenda? Motion by Mr. Billich, second by Mr. Girl. Are there any board members who are opposed to approving the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to cast a yes vote for all members present. Motion passes. County Administrator's Report, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I won't repeat everything, but I just wanted to also thank Mr. Fellers, Zintak, Fiducia, and Haney, members leaving the board, and would like to welcome new board members, Mr. Lindmark, Mr. McCarthy, Mrs. Fellers and the new chairman, Shirelli. I look forward to working with all the newly elected board members and board chair. And as I have with the current board members, I'll be reaching out to new board members individually to schedule one-on-one meetings with you just to say hi and get to know you. And we can talk about county business. And so thank you. Would also like to thank outgoing State's Attorney Marilyn Height Ross for her leadership and her assistance with the county board. And I appreciate the work that she has done for us. And in the short time I've been here, I've grown a fond appreciation for her legal expertise and advice to the board. Also would like to thank outgoing recorder Nancy McPherson for her work and dedication to Winnebago County. Happy Thanksgiving, and that's it for my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Are there any department head updates tonight?
No, sir.
Great. Moving on then, unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business before this board? Mr. Kelly.
I'd like to move to remove the appointments from the table.
Thank you. I have a motion by Mr. Kelly to remove the board appointments from the table and a second by Mrs. Crosby. Clerk Gummo, let's go ahead and call the roll.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We will start with Mr. Zintak.
No.
Mr. Arena,
No.
Mr. Billich,
No.
Mr. Booker,
No.
Mr. Butita,
Yes.
Mrs. Crosby,
Yes.
Mr. Fellers,
Yes.
Mr. Fiducia is still with us. Mr.
I'm here.
Fiducia?
No. No.
Thank you, Mr. Fiducia. Mr. Girl,
No.
Mrs. Gorel,
No.
Mr. Hoffman,
No.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald,
No.
Mr. Neighbors,
Yes.
Mrs. Red,
No.
Mr. Salgado,
No.
Mr. Schultz is still absent. Mr. Tassoni,
No.
Mr. Webster,
No.
Mr. Westcott,
No.
Mr. Chairman, that is 1 absent, 5 yes, and 14 no.
Thank you, Clerk Gummo. The motion fails. Is there any other unfinished business before this board? Seeing none, we'll move on to standing committee reports. Finance Committee, Mr. Salgado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Finance Committee tonight has 2 resolutions. The first one, and I so move, the resolution authorizing execution of a collective bargaining agreement with Illinois Fraternal Order of Police Labor Council representing deputies in the office of Winnebago County Sheriff, and I so move.
Thank you, Mr. Salgado. I have a motion on the resolution authorizing the execution of a collective bargaining agreement with the Illinois Fraternal Order of Police Labor Council representing deputies in the office of the Winnebago County Sheriff. May I have a second, please? Second by Mr. Zintak. Any discussion before the board? Mr. Hoffman. Mr. Hoffman, we cannot hear you.
No, Chairman, I was seconding.
Okay, no problem.
Did you hear me?
Are there any questions or comments
All right.
from board members?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're breaking up definitely a little bit, Mr. Hoffman. Mr. Arena, do you have a question, comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The increase in cost for the deputies, was it accounted for in our budget for this year, Mr. Thompson?
Go ahead, Mr. Thompson.
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, and so there'll be an additional increase in the amount of money that's necessary to be budgeted for next year for the sheriff, correct? Because
Yes,
of it?
that's correct. It's a 3-year contract, 2.25% increase for each year of the contract. This includes approximately a little over a year in back pay. It includes the current year dollars which are budgeted, and then also we will be budgeting for 2021 a 2.25% increase for each year, 3 of the 3-year contract. It's a total fiscal impact of approximately 1.2 million over the 3-year contract.
Okay, so the prior year, this year have already been taken care of budget-wise. We just need to plan for next budget cycle for that final year, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Arena. Are there any other questions or comments from board members? Seeing none, are there any board members who are opposed to this motion? Seeing no opposition, I will ask the clerk to cast a yes vote for all members present. The motion passes. Mr. Salgado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will go on to a resolution, which is, give me one sec here. Resolution authorizing the settlement of a claim against the County of Winnebago entitled Fred Jones versus Winnebago County in the amount of $30,839.47. And I so move.
Thank you, Mr. Salgado. I have a motion on a resolution authorizing settlement of a claim against the County of Winnebago entitled Fred Jones versus Winnebago County in the amount of $30,839.47. May I please have a second? Seconded by Mr. Hoffman. Are any questions or comments from board members? Seeing none, are there any board members who are opposed to this motion? Seeing no opposition, I'll ask the clerk to cast a yes vote for all members present. The motion passes. Mr. Salgado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That concludes the Finance Committee's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Salgado. Zoning Committee, Mr. Webster.
No report.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. Economic Development Committee, Mr. Billich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And for Economic Development Committee, we do have one matter of business, and that is a resolution authorizing a grant of $80,000 to Awaken 815 NFP to assist with their Awaken 815 culinary program. And I so move.
I have a motion by Mr. Billich on a resolution authorizing a grant of $80,000 to Awaken 815 NFP to assist with their Awaken 815 culinary. We have a second.
Second, Dorsey.
I'm going to give the second to Mrs. Red. Any comments or discussion from the board?
Actually,
you're muted. There you go.
I just realized that. Sorry about that. Yeah, if I could just describe it just a little bit for the other county board members. So this is basically, this grant that they're asking for is from a non-for-profit organization that's opening a culinary school on the State Street area in the Miracle Mile. It is the old Imperial Palace, and they are going to be renovating that place. They have gotten funding that they're going to be getting through the TIF money, as well as other funding sources from the city of Rockford, equivalent to about $400,000. They're asking us $80,000 from the host fees, and that's actually so they can have funding for the roof and for the new hood that they're going to be installing. So that is what the $80,000 would go towards. The group itself is actually going to be taking on, they've worked with multiple other non-for-profits that they're going to be helping people that are struggling to find work, as well as people that have gone through either Rosecrans or rehabilitation services and stuff like that. That's going to be their primary focus on helping those individuals out and getting them trained in the culinary field. I can speak on behalf of other restaurants that is beneficial to have people that are going to be already trained, so you're not hiring them as dishwashers to start and then having to train them through the process. and it's going to make it a little bit easier for the market that we have for as far as cooks go. One of the things that I would definitely also bring up is that they've been actually working on this for many years. I will give a shout out to a couple members that I know that have been heavily involved with this. Dorothy Red is a very big proponent for this. She's helped them through the process of reaching out to different county offices as well as county board members. Jean Crosby has also mentioned that she at one point in time has helped them find locations for this program. And there's a couple other board members that have had a lot of influence with this. I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Westcott also had experience dealing with this organization as well. So with that being said, it did pass unanimously through committee, and hopefully this is going to be a great new thing to happen to the area. I, for one, will say that at least something's happening with one of the large establishments, former establishments that we've had, which is the Imperial Palace, will now finally have a new owner and a new life, as you will, to the building. So.
Thank you, Mr. Billich. Are there any other board members with comments? Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Fellers. I think this is very much necessary. I think the closest culinary school is actually Chicago from where we're at. The question I have is the city of Rockford or anybody else helping these people out to get to where they need to be?
If I can respond to that. Yes, City of Rockford is. The city, because of their enterprise zones and because of TIF districts, they didn't have to have the council on it, so they didn't use their CBDG funds for it. However, they did actually give the TIF money on behalf of the city, and they also did give money from the city that they could through those programs that they already pre-approve through the staff. The other help that they did get was they also got help from some state funding from Senator Stottleman. And that's, as far as I know, that's the most that I can discuss now. I do believe they are actually also tied to one other restaurant group. I did make a formal request for them to reach out to other existing establishments, especially along the East State Corridor, because, you know, working with those guys, having another restaurant in the area, they are going to run it partially as a restaurant. It is going to be a culinary school, but they will be serving people because obviously they're going to be making food. I'm just hoping that they're not going to be too competitive against other restaurants, and I hope that they actually work with other restaurants to be able to work out a very fluid system that's going to benefit both them and the restaurant as well as the community.
Mr. McDonald, a follow-up?
Thank you for the follow-up. Jazz or anybody else, how does somebody get involved in this? If somebody, we're just approving this and it's getting started, how do they get signed up to get started in these classes?
I can actually forward on the information. I have Chris forward on their proposal as well as their actual information to their website. That is actually through Juria Crudup. She's the one that's leading this program, and she actually works with, they are also going to be able to apply not only through their program, but they are working with 2 other schools as well. This will be posted on the DuPage College. We do have a satellite facility here in Rockford, Illinois. And so they will be also doing it through DuPage as well because they're helping them through the process.
And to add to that, I mean, these students were getting an accreditation through the College of DuPage. Is that correct, Mr. Village?
Correct. Yes, this is an accredited program through the College of DuPage.
Great, thank you. Mr. Arena.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm a little confused about the not-for-profit status of this entity. If they're operating as a restaurant, and are the students not paying tuition? Do they, or are they paying tuition? I'm just wondering, where does that revenue that they produce end up going if they're not for profit?
If I will.
Go ahead, Mr. Billich.
From my understanding so far, I had actually a similar concern. It is one of the reasons why I was going to bring up a concern tonight as well. I do know that we had them waiting to actually have a committee meeting for them for a while now. However, from my understanding, the funding that will go through there from the restaurant, they will obviously have discounted food for family members and heavily advertised through, like, obviously getting the family of these students into the school and providing food and a lot more affordable food for them. However, aside from that, I do believe that actually the purchase price of the food is going to be funding the school and the paying for the bills that are going to be attributed to the building and the teaching staff.
So the students don't pay tuition.
The one thing that I did not ask about was the tuition portion. That is a very good question, Mr. Arena.
Okay, but they're a not-for-profit registered with the state, and there's, I'm sure, guidelines that they have to adhere to maintain not-for-profit status.
Absolutely, there are guidelines that they do have to maintain with. I do believe that if they do have a tuition, that would be for anyone that is not coming from the other non-for-profits, meaning if they're not coming from Remedies or from Rosecrans or some program like that, or whether it be some program with, they said that they will also be dealing with people that are obviously just getting back on their feet after going through jail or whatever it may be. I do believe that they're actually going to be waiving those fees for them. However, if anybody that just wants to come in off the street and sign up for it, I do believe that they are actually going to be charged a small tuition fee.
Okay, I see. Thank you very much.
Mrs. Red, did you have a comment?
Well, I'm going to stick my neck out. I don't think they're paying a tuition fee, as far as I know. So.
Yeah, to my understanding from Drea's comments in committee, you know, I mean, they're recruiting at risk, you know, young adults and individuals, primarily age 18 to 35. And it sounds like they've got some I don't want to use the word quota, but, you know, recruiting out of the Rockford Housing Authority, the Winnebago County Housing Authority, Remedies, and other groups, essentially trying to intervene into subset, you know, sections of the population that are heavily at risk. And providing them with a path towards financial independence.
Right.
Yeah, that would be the correct statement. That is what the primary focus is on.
Great. Are there any other comments or questions from board members?
I will just add one comment on there. I will be supporting this. I'm not going to lie. I'm a little bit against it. I will be supporting them because of the in essence, the program that they presented. I do want at-risk people to have this opportunity. I do want people to actually have this for their community. I do think that we are lacking in a culinary program in the area. We did have some that were through Rock Valley College. We did have another one that was also run through the Hoffman House as well. I think that this one being an accredited program, I think this will help in a drastic way. My only concern is that there's not going to be a competition between or amongst other restaurants, and definitely similar to what Mr. Arena brought up was just to make sure that this is going to be run just like it's supposed to be as a non-for-profit. I do know they have rules that they have to adhere to. I don't want the wrong impression to other restaurant owners that had they made their restaurant a non-for-profit organization, they would have gotten funding to have it open and paid for by the community instead of having to put up their own money. That's my only concern. Obviously, this is not what this is. This is a non-for-profit. Therefore, I do believe that they do need this funding, and I do believe this program could be beneficial.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Bilich. Any other comments from board members? Seeing none, are there any board members who are opposed to this resolution? Seeing no opposition, I will ask the clerk to cast a yes vote for all members present. Motion passes. Mr. Bilich.
And just to add in again on this one please be aware that I will be figuring out which day. It won't be early next week for a committee meeting. However, I am working with Chris and trying to figure out other resolutions that we can possibly help out the local community restaurants. Please keep in mind that there are many of them that are offering to-go orders right now, especially on turkey dinners. There's a lot of restaurants that have decided to gamble it and take a huge gamble and order a lot of turkeys and a lot of meals so they can actually help serve the community as far as getting orders for turkey dinners for them. There are a few places that will be open on patio dining as well. If you guys could please pass along the word and message just to try to make sure that everybody in our local area tries our local food and tries to offer these local places more support.
Thank you, Mr. Bilich. If perhaps you could quickly sort of formulate a list of restaurants that you know of that have actually gone through this. I know you're closely connected to that community. Perhaps the county can push it out on the website and through social channels, and as board members, we can amplify that as well.
I can absolutely do that. I can have a list emailed out tomorrow, and then if I need to add on to that list, because there are some restaurants there are actually a couple restaurants that decided to close for a few days, and then now they're just starting to go through a reopen cycle so they can try this takeout process for the holidays and try to make sure their staff can have some kind of funding source during the holidays.
Thank you, Mr. Bilich. Mr. Kelly, a comment?
Thank you, Chairman. I had a call this morning from Bob Prosser. He's the owner of Hoffman House out there off East State and Bell School. And they're pleading for any kind of help at all that the county board might be able to provide he was almost asking if we defund the health department. Ain't gonna happen, but wonder if we can somehow open up conversations with the health department.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. And Mr. Village, I know that you are looking to get a program together soon. As soon as the new board is seated, I would imagine, so that action can be taken relatively quickly. Really, all the best in your endeavors on that, and I know that you'll get that working group together soon.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Village?
No, that does conclude our report.
Thank you, Mr. Village. Moving on to the Operations and Administrative Committee, Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Fellers. Operations has no report this evening. I would just like to echo what others have said. Please support your local restaurants. Get some takeout, curbside service. Please, there's literally hundreds, if not thousands of jobs at risk. Please order out when you get the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. We all echo that. Moving on, Public Works Committee, Mr. Tassoni.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have no report.
Thank you, Mr. Tassoni. Public Safety Committee, Mr. Booker.
Thank you, Mr. Fellers. I've got Public Safety Committee has two resolutions. First resolution is authorizing the execution of a First Amendment to agreement between Winnebago County and Remedies Renewing Lives for the Justice for Families grant. And I so move.
Thank you, Mr. Booker. I have a motion authorized on the resolution authorizing the execution of a First Amendment to the agreement between Winnebago County, Illinois and Remedies Renewing Lives for the Justice for Families grant. May I have a second? Mr. Salgado. Thank you. Any discussion from board members, or Mr. Booker, would you like to add to this?
Just that I'd like to commend the grant writer in our court administrator's office that continues to secure these grants from the Department of Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Booker. Any other comments or questions from board members? Seeing none, are there any board members who are opposed to this?
Mr. Zintak has his hand up.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Zintak? Nope. Okay. Are there any board members who are opposed to this motion? Seeing none, I will ask the clerk to cast a yes vote for all members present. Motion carries. Mr. Booker.
Thank you, Mr. Fellers. The second resolution is approving an updated intergovernmental agreement for the operation and funding of the Winnebago County Emergency Telephone System. And I so move.
Thank you, Mr. Booker. I have a motion on the resolution approving an updated intergovernmental agreement for the operation and funding of the Winnebago County Emergency Telephone System. I see a second from Mr. Zintak. Any discussion from board members? Mr. Webster.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we got an email today from Mr. Chapman, and Steve tells us that, let's see, we didn't use any of the services during 2019. Is that correct, Steve? Mr. Chapman?
Mr. Thompson or Mr. Chapman?
Yeah, the agreement was effective from May 31st from May 31st, 2018 to May 31st, 2019. The county never utilized any of the services that were to be provided.
Okay, so I guess this has no effect on what we're voting on then this evening.
No, I think it was in response to a question that was raised at the committee meetings last week.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
And just so I can provide some background on that, there was discussion at Public Safety and Finance regarding the emergency agreement we had in place with the city of Rockford when there were some staffing shortages in the 911 center, and it was unsure of what was the status of the IGA. Mr. Thompson confirmed that IGA has expired and that we did not use any of the services or pay for any services to the city of Rockford. Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Fellers. And I brought that up, this, at the time, very expensive agreement between us and the city of Rockford to cover. It was my hopes that in the future, we include this kind of language in this contract to make sure we're covered, whether they have a severe shortage or we have a severe shortage, but looking for better planning in the next IGA. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Any other questions or comments from board members? Mr. Booker.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I just want to remind everyone that the terms of the agreement shall be 1 year from the execution of this agreement and renewed on an annual basis, unless either party gives 180 days notice requesting modification of the agreement. So either party may terminate the agreement by giving 12 months notice to the other party. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Booker. Any additional comments from board members? Seeing none, are there any board members who are opposed to this motion? Seeing and hearing none, I will ask the clerk to cast a yes vote for all members present. Motion carries. Mr. Booker.
Thank you, Mr. Fellers. And I'd just like to add one last thing. And it was brought up in the last meeting about the successful arrest of a defendant in the Tammy Tracy case and the wonderful work that our investigators with Rockford City, Winnebago County, Illinois State. But I don't know if anyone mentioned, but I would like to make mention of a special shout out to our state's attorney, Marilyn Height Ross. I was informed by investigators that she was very instrumental in the guidance, her expertise and knowledge of law updates that were able to guide the investigators in a successful arrest of this. So Ms. Height Ross, very much appreciation for you and your staff in this very, very important case. And I wish you all the best in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Booker, and thank you, Ms. Height Ross. Is that it, Mr. Booker?
That concludes my report. Thank you, Mr. Fellers.
Thank you, Mr. Booker. Moving on to Personnel and Policies Committee for the last time into the breach, Mr. Fiducia.
Thank you, Mr. Fellers. Personnel and Policy has 3 items on the agenda, 1 resolution and 2 to be laid over. I'd like to take the 2 to be laid over together with your consent. And the first is a resolution authorizing the execution of a renewal agreement with Arthur J. Gallagher for property and casualty workers' compensation coverage. And I so move.
Thank you. I have a motion by Mr. Fiducia on the resolution authorizing the execution of a renewal agreement with Arthur J. Gallagher for the property, casualty, and workers' compensation coverage. May I have a second? Mr. Webster, thank you for the second. Any discussion, comments from board members? Or Mr. Fiducia, would you like to add some more detail to this?
Unless Mr. Thompson has something to add to it, no.
Nothing to add, Mr. Chairman. This is annual renewal for our property and liability and workers' comp insurance. It is approximately $110,000 increase over last year's premium. That's due to some increased property damage that we had this past year and the COVID-19. And as it was discussed in committee, we want to make sure when we go for renewal next year that we have discussion about what impact the COVID actually did have on our insurance premiums and in our loss history, and whether or not that's reflected in our renewal next year. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Any questions or comments from board members? Mr. Arena, I saw your hand raised.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Thompson answered my question, so I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arena. Any other questions or comments from board members? Seeing none, are there any board members who are opposed to this motion? Seeing and hearing no opposition, I will ask the clerk to cast a yes vote for all members present. Mr. Fiducia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to take items 3 and 4 together. I'll read them both in, and then I'm going to move for a suspension of the rules. First is an ordinance amending section of Chapter 62 of the County Code of Ordinances to be laid over. Next one is an ordinance amending the sections Chapter 2 of the County Code of Ordinances to be laid over. And I would so move that, and I'd like to suspend the rules.
I have a motion to suspend the rules. All right. Am I getting seconds here or am I getting, okay. Real quick. I have a motion to suspend the rules seconded by Mr. Webster. Is there anyone opposed to suspending the rules on items 3 and 4? Mr. Butita, is that a no vote on the suspension? Thank you, Mr. Butita. I'll ask the clerk to cast a yes vote for all members present excepting Mr. Butita. The rules are now suspended. Mr. Fiducia.
Thank you. And then I'll read them in again if you'd like, but I so move on 3 and 4.
That's good. That's good enough. I have a motion on items 3 and 4, ordinances amending section 62 and ordinance amending sections of chapter 2. May I please have a second? A second again by Mr. Webster. Any comments questions from board members on these two ordinances? Go ahead, Mr. Butita.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I indicated in caucus, I'm in favor of the creation of both of these positions, the Chief Financial Officer and the Human Resources Director. But I'm not in favor at this point of voting yes, unless we incorporate into the talks of the responsibilities for the county chairman going forward. So I'll be a no vote on this issue at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Butita. Are there any other comments or questions from board members? Seeing none, are there any board members opposed to this motion? Okay, I see an opposition from Mrs. Crosby and Mr. Butita. Are there any other oppositions to this motion? Seeing none, I will ask the clerk to cast a yes vote for all members present, excepting Ms. Crosby and Ms. Butita. The motion passes. We have amended sections of chapter 2 and sections of chapter 62. Mr. Fiducia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's been a privilege, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Fiducia. As we move on to new business, I know there's a few of us leaving. Mr. Zintak, is there anything you share a few words before we adjourn for the night?
No, I wanted to thank everybody for the opportunity. I've enjoyed it. It's been interesting. And we'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Mr. Zintak, and thank you for your service. Mr. Fiducia, is there anything else you'd like to add?
The past 12 years has been fun, and thank you all for your kind words, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Fiducia. Ms. Height-Ross.
Thank you, Acting Chairman. I just wanted to personally thank the county board members for selecting me and trusting me to lead the office for the past 2 years. It has been a blessing, a privilege, and an honor to be of service to Winnebago County residents, but also to be of service to all of you. I think I have the most important clients that any lawyer could ever have. And I just want you all to know that you will be in my prayers as you continue to navigate these trepid waters and continue to take care of county business for Winnebago County residents. I understand the sacrifice that all of you make, and I just wanted to state that publicly, that you are appreciated, and I hope that your constituents appreciate the sacrifices that all of you make to take care of Winnebago County business. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless Winnebago County.
Thank you, Ms. Height-Ross, and thank you for your service. Before we adjourn, I would just like to take a quick moment to say thank you. Thank you to all of you. It's been, Mr. Webster, you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I guess I'd like to follow up to a couple of things here. At the opening of this meeting, Bert mentioned that he's going to caucus with the Republicans, and I think that's fine. That's great. We welcome anyone there. All I want to say about that, though, is that I don't expect there'll be any major changes, any shakeups as far as the way that the board conducts themselves. Bert has been a gentleman all throughout his tenure, treated everyone respectfully. I don't expect his demeanor to change whatsoever. And furthermore, I don't think it's going to have any effect on the way that this board has addressed the issues and voted on the issues. And I've told constituents many, many times over that we are blessed, that we are not like Springfield and we are not like Washington. We do not have partisan pissing matches on the Winnebago County Board. And so I don't think that's going to have any effect going forward. So I'd be surprised if it did. And Marilyn, you said you were blessed and privileged and honored. It was us that were blessed, privileged, and honored to have you here. Thank you. You've shown more strength and more character than any of the former state's attorneys that I have had the pleasure to work with. Thank you.
Here, here.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. Any other comments from board members? Seeing Mr. Girl.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to say thank you to Mr. Webster. Thank you to Miss Marilyn Height Ross. I didn't get a chance earlier to say how wonderful of a job you have done, how well you have led that office, even with scrutiny and turmoil from the media at times. You've done a wonderful job. You should be proud. We are proud. I wish you the best in the future. I know whatever you do, you will succeed beyond doubt. So thank you, Marilyn. And thanks, Dan.
Mr. Hoffman.
I had to make my adjustments. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I want to thank you, Marilyn, for the fine job you did. And I want to thank my caucus for bringing your name up to do the job. So you lived up to all our expectations and more. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. Seeing no other comments from board members, I'll just take, being in the bully pulpit here, I get to go last. Thank you. It's been, I can't believe it's been 4 years already. This has been the greatest privilege of my life, serving with every single one of you. I don't think there's a single person on this board that I haven't argued with one-on-one at least once, and I don't think I'd want to have it any other way. It's truly been a privilege. Thank you for your continued service to this county, and thank you for having me as a part of this board. And with that, I will accept a motion to adjourn. I've got a motion by Mr. Butina, second by Mr. Girl. Is there any board member who is opposed to adjourning?
No.
Seeing none, will the clerk please cast a yes vote for all members present? Have a wonderful and happy Thanksgiving. Stay safe, everyone, and good luck in the next term.
Bye. Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye, Dan.
Lori?